So since the Chag of Shavuot is approaching, I decided to do a special lecture in honor of the holiday. And after the holiday, we'll go back to the regular class on Tanya. I actually have in mind to do some special lectures in the near future about current events. I haven't done one in a long time, in many years actually, and it needs to be updated. So God willing, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll take care of that too at some other time. Chag HaShavuot, the holiday of Shavuot, is very special to the Jewish people because of what it represents. This is the time when the Jewish nation received the Torah, when they heard directly from God. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am your God. This is the time when we officially and formally accepted the yoke of the mitzvot, of the commandments. Na'aseh v'nishma, we will follow, we will do. We will abide by the mitzvot for all eternity, for all time. We will transmit this tradition to our children. We will be committed to it regardless of the challenges, regardless of the difficulties. It is definitely a very important historical event in the past, and when we commemorate something of the past, it's not just to remember, to reminisce, but it's to remind ourselves of the importance of that event and how it affects us, the future generations. After all, it was not only our forefathers who accepted it upon themselves to do as the Torah commands, but they pretty much took it upon themselves to teach it, to give it over, and to do their best that the children should follow as well. I decided to call this lecture Man's Greatest Strength, Rising Above His Base Emotions. As you will see, this is very much related to what the Torah teaches. And this is very important when it comes to marriage. In order for a marriage to succeed, people need to rise above their basic emotions. That is one of the problems that stands in the way of a successful marriage. People's feelings, sentiments, personality, emotions. And since Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, also represents a marriage of sorts between God and the Jewish people, many of the ideas that apply to a successful marriage between a husband and wife also apply to a successful connection between the Jew and God. So a lot of what you will hear really can apply to both areas, whether it's one's faith, one's connection to God, or one's marriage, or one's friendship. It actually applies to any relationship. That is, if we want that relationship to succeed, there are certain things that we need to be aware of. In the Torah we find a very unique commandment, Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, that you should love your fellow Jew. Now that's something very, very special, that is very, very nice, important. It is definitely something that we need to aspire to, but is it really possible to love someone like yourself? The rabbis tell us that what the Torah had in mind was not actually to love someone else exactly the way you love yourself, but in general terms, love means to care. Love means to care about another individual, about another human being. And the way to go about it properly is whatever you don't want someone to do to you, don't do unto others. That is how we can define in simple terms what this love or what this care is all about. Whatever you would like others to do for you, then you do unto others. If you want to have a friend, then be a friend. So showing our love, our care to others is by respecting them, by helping them. There are many ways that one can show that love and care and concern. The mitzvot enable us, facilitate this medium of how we go about caring for another individual. Rabbi Akiva tells us that this mitzvah is a klal gadol b'Torah, that this is a very important rule in the Torah, a very important principle, to love a fellow Jew as yourself. What he meant is that it's through this mitzvah one can come to accomplish pretty much everything that the Torah asks of us, since a great deal of the Torah has to do between man and his fellow Jew, many commandments, ben adam lechavero, how one needs to behave himself, what is expected of him, what are the requirements, that one Jew is obligated for another. Not only are there mitzvot, commandments between us and Hashem and God, but it's also how to behave ourselves, how to form a beautiful and ideal society, community. So Rabbi Akiva says, therefore, remember this mitzvah, this one mitzvah. If you do so, it will help you. As long as, of course, you abide by it, as long as you follow it. It is through this mitzvah that you can come to fulfill, to observe just about all the mitzvot in the Torah. This is a springboard. This will be a tremendous help if you aspire to this. However, what I would like to add is that what was meant by this klal gadol b'Torah is that man's greatness really depends on this mitzvah. If he follows this commandment or not, that will determine whether he will succeed in life or not. Man's greatness will be seen, will come out depending on this one mitzvah. How much he gives of himself to others, or how selfish he is. That will make the determination. What's interesting about this mitzvah is that people think that it's difficult. They really think that it's very, very difficult to care for someone else as to care for yourself. The reason why many people think it's difficult is because they haven't tried. First, you have to try. You have to learn what it takes to be a gentleman, to be devoted, to be giving. You have to get used to it. It's a matter of habits. Plus, there are a lot of people who are simply very much into themselves. So they automatically see this as something very, very challenging. So they complain that this is asking too much. But listen to what Marcus Aurelius said. One of the Roman kings, who was actually a good king, a philosopher. He says, you have the power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. You have the power over your mind. That's right. It's what you think. If you think you cannot do something, then you may not go ahead and do it. If you really think that something is possible and you're determined to do it, and you do whatever it takes and you persist, then you actually may succeed. A lot depends on the mind. The mind has tremendous power in convincing us of whatever it is we want to believe. But what's interesting is an additional detail that he says, that we don't have power over outside events. And that's true. Fate, mazal, outside events, whether there will be war or peace, what the economy will be like, what the weather will be like, we have no control. Over those areas we really have no control. We do have power over our mind. And if we realize this, we will be able to find strength. In other words, this ability to control ourselves, to be better people, to refine our character, it requires strength, of course. But it is only after we have accomplished that that we will really see how strong we are. In other words, one who does not refine his character, one who does not try to control his temper, he's really not strong. He's really weak, very weak. Man can be his worst enemy. Man has weaknesses, but he also has strength with which he can overcome those weaknesses. So it takes strength to get there. And once we've gotten there, we will see that our greatest strength lies in elevating ourselves above the animal in us. You could say that, in retrospect, one's faith in God, was always a source of strength. It's true. Historically, the Jews' faith in Hashem was a source of strength. But it was not always enough. It's not enough to just believe. It's not enough to assure one of success just because one is observant and one is religious. There are many, unfortunately, individuals who are religious, observant, who have not succeeded in this area of being gentlemen, of being honest, of being kind and benevolent. They've gotten divorced. They've ended up in jail. Just because one has faith in God and is religious does not guarantee anything. It may help. It is a source of strength. during many, many difficult times and challenges that your Jew has had to face, but it's not enough. What is important to keep in mind is that every human being has the potential. It's not that some have it more than others. We all have this potential of being able to conquer that evil inclination within us. The question is, are we prepared to do what it takes? And you know what? It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of hard work. Let me share with you a story that is so special when you hear the details of it. There was a great rabbi who passed away not long ago by the name of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, a great sage in Israel. Not only was he a very learned man, he was a very kind man, very pure. But what struck everybody, whether it was those who knew him or those who did not know him, is something that he said that was actually observable for those who knew him from up close. And I think it happened when his wife passed away. We have a custom that we go over to the deceased and we ask forgiveness. Perhaps we may have done something wrong against them. Perhaps we may have insulted them. Perhaps we did something not right while they were alive, and we asked their forgiveness during the funeral. And this rabbi went over to the deceased and says, I don't think I have to ask her forgiveness because I've never done anything against her. I've never insulted her, never offended her. On the contrary, he was always willing to help her, to give her a hand, never complained. He was a real gentleman, a real devoted husband, so special. So what's surprising is for someone to say that he has never done anything against his wife. He's never offended, never insulted. It's surprising, but I believe it, because that's the type of individual he was. But when you think about it, can anyone make this claim? That is a very difficult claim to make. No one is perfect. We all know that. But to behave oneself for many, many years and to never make a mistake, never do something wrong against your spouse, that takes a tremendous amount of strength. But it's not just the strength. It's the interest, the desire to succeed. When you get married under the chuppah, hopefully the husband and wife both have an interest to succeed. I don't think anyone wants to fail. I don't think anyone is thinking about divorce when they're getting married. Then why don't they do everything, whatever it takes, to have a beautiful marriage? Obviously it takes a lot. Not everybody is prepared to do a lot, to invest too much if it becomes too difficult. And that's why I said it takes a tremendous amount of effort and will to be able to accomplish this. Now let's take a look at the other side of the world, the secular world. There's an old argument among psychologists, which I mentioned in perhaps 1 or 2 lectures. Is it possible for a man to love his wife and to cheat on her, to betray her trust? Is it still possible for him to love her? You know, whenever I ask this question, the men say, of course it is, and the women say, of course not. But we want to know what the Torah says. Is it possible for a man to still love his wife, even though he cheats on her? So what do you say? The women, of course, are going to say no.
It's possible.
It's still possible? Well, even if it's possible, it's not 100% love. Maybe 65%, barely passing. Why not? What's the problem here? There's an argument among psychologists. Some say, yes, it's still possible. Some say, no, it's not possible. For a simple reason, it's not possible according to the Torah. If you are doing something that you know will hurt the feelings of another individual, you know in advance that this will hurt, this will cause her pain, and you still do it, that means you don't care so much about her. Very simple. If one willingly, knowingly knows in advance that what he's about to do will cause pain, and it does cause pain, right? And distress to, I think, almost any normal woman, and you still do it, that means the love is not 100% there. Maybe a little bit. Maybe you like her food, right? Maybe there's some things you like about her, but there's not a real love there. It cannot be a real love if you know that whatever you're doing will cause her pain and you still do it. So that's the answer to that question. So now the question is, well, then how is it possible that someone who started off loving his spouse, and he really did, at one time at least, stop loving? In other words, where does it all begin? It's not just that he saw someone who was nice looking. It's a lot more complicated than that. But we're not going to get into all the factors that cause people to become distracted and not focused in their own home and to go elsewhere. That's a different lecture. What's the bottom line? The bottom line, I think we can borrow from the following story. There was once an individual, an alcoholic, who came for consultation. He was having a problem with alcohol. What was his problem? He really tried hard to get off it, to rehabilitate himself. And he went to classes and so forth, and he succeeded for a while. And then he had what they call a relapse. He went back to his drinking problem. And obviously he needed help. And he came for help because it was destroying his family life, it was destroying his career. Everything was falling apart. I mean, he was at least aware that this was getting him into a lot of trouble. Some people, you know, are in denial. And they are worse off. They are worse off because they may be very difficult to help. But this individual apparently came to the conclusion that is why he was seeking help. So the rabbi asked him, tell me, he consulted with the rabbi, tell me, how was it when you got off alcohol the first time? He says, it was great. Those were my best years when I was off alcohol. My marriage was back to normal. I made a lot of money during those years. Everything was stable. Okay, then you tell me what happened. That if you see the difference between when you were an alcoholic and when you were not, what made you go back? You know what he said? I thought I can get away with it. 1 cup of whiskey here, scotch, arak, whatever your choice. He thought he can get away with it, that nothing will happen. You know, some people think they can get away with it. Just 1 small text message while they're driving. That's all it takes for an accident. 1 word. You were distracted. You think you can get away with it? It's dangerous. You saw for yourself what it did to you. But in his mind, this is an intelligent individual. He actually thought he can get away with it. Still drink a little bit, control himself, and have a normal life. It didn't work like that. So this idea of getting away with it is what destroys a lot of marriages. A lot of people get themselves into trouble, whether it's criminal activity. Just steal once. Just cheat once. Just do something wrong once. Right? Break the law once. Just once. That's all it takes sometimes. People have fallen into this trap of thinking they can get away with it. And a lot of marriages are dissolving because of that. They may not blame that excuse of thinking that they're going to get away with it. Obviously, there are other factors on why marriages break up, why people's feelings for each other cool off. But deep down at the bottom, there's this idea of perhaps I can get away with it, I can have the cake and eat it too. But you can't. What we see from this is that even if one is religious, even if one is aware that something is wrong, he has experience even. He's seen other marriages fail. The law must speak. It's not enough. It's not enough to protect one from sin just because he's religious. He was brought up religious. The Torah, the mitzvot, the religion can direct us, can show us the right path. But if one chooses not to follow it, regardless of how religious he is, he will fail. Human beings have that ability of success and of failure. Either one. It's up to us. That's where free will comes in. Hashem does not determine that. We determine that. It all depends what we decide, what kind of a individual we want to be. So how do we help this individual who is having trouble, whether it is with alcohol or with his marriage or any other area in life where he's having a very hard time? We ask him to look deep down and consider really what is the most important thing in his life. What is really important to him? If he says money, I don't think you can help him too much in his relationship. That's not a good answer for someone who's really looking to have a successful marriage and successful relationship. Money is going to destroy it. And for many people, money has become an idol. We know that. Very tempting. If he says, my marriage is the most important thing in my life, my kids, well, now you have something to work with. This is a healthy way of thinking. These should be important to the normal, average human being who's married and who has kids. You know, I think I told you that there was one guy who told me who was having trouble in his marriage, don't tell me about my kids. Rabbi, I want a life of my own too. I'm not just married so my kids can have a stable home. I said, wow, I've never heard that. But I guess there are people out there who are thinking of themselves. I'm not saying that you're not entitled to a good marriage, of course. But wait a minute. At what cost? Right? That's the question. So what's most important to you? Is it money? Is it the marriage? Your relationship with God? So that's the first question that one has to ask himself. This hopefully will help him focus. Perhaps he's not thinking right. He doesn't have the right attitude. He doesn't have the correct priorities. How do we know that there is a problem out there these days? Look at how many marriages are falling apart. There are many problems out there. And we don't have the time to go through all the problems. But why are they falling apart? Is there some common denominator that's ruining marriages? I've met with people who told me, listen, Rabbi, I just prefer not to live any longer with this individual. He's not so bad. Did you hear what I just said? They tell me, he's not a bad person. He provides for me, somewhat. Maybe the woman provides more. Maybe she earns more. But he's okay. He's nice. But he's really not doing anything, contributing to a strong relationship. I would love to have a better, deeper relationship. He's okay with the kids. He's not bad. He never abused me. Is that a reason to get a divorce? I mean, what do you say? She's not happy. First of all, who's to say that you will be happier with the second man? He may have other issues. And even if it's true that you may be happier with other individuals, according to Judaism, the fact that you got together and you have children, it makes a difference if there are children or not in their relationship, then you were both brought together through Hashgacha, through divine providence. That means you need to be together. Unless, of course, there is abuse, unless it's an extreme situation where it's totally not tolerable. I mean, there is something called a divorce, but it is a last resort. Today, people have made it priority. Today, it's no longer a last resort, it's the first choice. If something is not right, even after a couple of weeks or months, they run to get a divorce. I'm not saying that there should be no divorces at all. There are times when, unfortunately, that's the only way to solve the problem. You know, people don't have to suffer. But ask yourself, are you really suffering And are you really willing to undo this relationship? Perhaps there's some benefits of continuing this relationship. Is it all about how you feel only? About being selfish and only thinking about your happiness and satisfaction? But what about the kids? What about your husband? Doesn't he deserve a dedicated woman, dedicated wife? And perhaps Hashem put you together because you have what he needs. And he has what you need. Somehow. There could be something there that the two of you can give to each other. Nothing is perfect. But not everybody's thinking like that. That would mean that somebody has to be a little bit, just a little bit unselfish. Oh, no, that's asking too much from some people. To be a little bit unselfish, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of courage and effort to live with someone that you're not 100% happy with. But you got married. And you have kids. So think about it. Think about it very, very carefully. It's not so simple. One of the mistakes that people make in marriages is that they don't know when to let go. They only want to hold on. Hold on to their beliefs. Hold on to their opinions and to their preferences. Let go. Sometimes you have to let go. Not to hold on. Who is asking you to hold on tight to your ideas and to your tastes and to your opinion? Let go. Let go. Be easy. Be flexible. Adapt to someone else. You know, if you want to get along with people, it can't always be your way or the highway. So it's not just in the business world. You know, sometimes in the business world, people are just more easygoing. Because it's a short-term relationship, they don't see them 24 hours a day. At home, it's when the challenges begin. But you proved yourself that you can be flexible and giving to others, then why not be so at home? I have a lecture on that called Charity Begins at Home, so does Honesty. You know, there's certain things that we have to implement at home too, not just in the outside world. Otherwise it's hypocritical. So we have to learn sometimes when to let go, when to just go along with the other person's wishes. So we started off saying that this takes a lot of effort. But this effort pays off. Rabbis tell us, Ezu Gibor HaKovesh et Yitzro. Who is a real strong man? Not one that is able to pick up 250 kilo, 500 pounds. Not one who conquers a city. Kovesh et Yitzro. One who is able to subdue his evil inclination, control his anger, change himself, be a better person. That is something admirable. That's something to look up to. That is real strength. It's possible. It, of course, requires work. But that is what the rabbis consider something truly admirable, because that is free will. How much money one makes, how much real estate he will have, does not really depend on the effort. It depends on the mazal. How one gets along with others, how his marriage will be, a lot will depend on his own decisions, on his own free will. So a person who's kovesh et yitzro, who's able to control himself, he has a tremendous advantage. He's not only controlling his evil inclination, he's actually controlling his life to an extent. He has a tremendous control over many, many areas of life that can go wrong by committing some terrible mistakes. And some of these mistakes are irreparable. Very difficult to repair. When you've hurt someone for so many years, as I've explained in the past, the feelings are lost. Now you want to start all over again? The only exception to this is when one wants to repent and do real teshuvah. Even after many years of having the wrong beliefs, wrong ideas about life, wrong ideas about God, he changes his mind. Hashem says, I'll accept you with open arms. Just come knocking on my door. And that's very, very admirable for somebody after many, many years of leading a certain way of life. If he wants to change directions, it takes strength, but it is possible. But in marriage, it's just very, very difficult because we're dealing with feelings of people. And because of that, people have to be extra careful that they don't make these mistakes, and this can only happen if they don't think too much about themselves. But for a person not to think about himself requires tremendous amount of strength of character. And I'm going to share with you just a couple of ideas of what can help a relationship. And these ideas can help us in many, many other areas of life as well. I asked myself a question the other day. How come when I put the papaya, the fruit, I wrap it in the newspaper, I leave it out for a couple of days, it becomes ripe. Just the right color, just the right flavor. I don't know if many of you are familiar with the Mexican papaya especially, not the Hawaiian papaya. Very, very tasty fruit, very healthy. In Brazil it's called mamão in Portuguese, but in Spanish and I think in English for the most part they call it papaya. And just about any other fruit, you leave it out for a while, some more, some less, it becomes ripe. When you first pick it, it may not be as ripe. If a fruit becomes ripe with a little bit of more time, isn't it true that the human being also becomes a little bit more ripe, more mature with time? It's true, isn't it? We see it. An adult does not think the same way a child does. He has become ripe. He has become mature. He has developed. He has grown. He's more experienced. And the rabbis tell us in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, Ben 40 lebina, ben 50 le'etzah. When you reach the age of 40, that is when you gain insight. Additional insight into life. When you reach the age of 50, you also have gained enough experience that you can also share your advice with others. So they tell us, Ben 40 lebina, ben 50 le'etzah. At 40, you've gained a lot of insight. Hopefully you've calmed down a little bit. Hopefully by then you have your career, you've gotten married, you have some children. By 50, you're already hopefully experienced enough that you can share your experience with others. Is that true for everyone? Not really. It all depends on how this individual conducted himself. But for a normal human being, there's definitely a lot he can share with others. They can be of great service at the age of 50. Then had he been 20 years old. What has happened between 20 and 50? He has become ripe. He has become mature, right? It's a fact. We see it. Then why is it that individuals who are older and more mature, who have made mistakes in their youth, are not changing, are not realizing their mistakes and taking whatever necessary action to change? After all, a lot of what I'm saying will be agreed upon by many. You know why? Because we all share the same goal. The goal is pretty much the same for many of various backgrounds and religions. We want to succeed in life. We want to have a solid marriage. So the goal is the same. What people forget is that sometimes to reach the goal you have to change your path. Perhaps we've been going down the wrong path. So yes, we have the same goal, but sir, or whoever it is that you're dealing with, don't you realize that you may have to change paths if you want to reach that goal? If that is your goal, and it is for many people, then sometimes it requires one to change their path. If you're mature, you're older, you agree that perhaps mistakes were made, then why not change paths? Why not do whatever it takes to make changes? So it could be that people have not matured enough and they're still behaving like little children, selfish. Because kids basically are selfish. It's all mine, give me. Right? They don't want to share. And you have adults who are behaving like children. That selfishness, even with the maturity and the age, did not go away. They've been investing in themselves so much that it's much more difficult now to change. They've been thinking about themselves all these years. That is why it's so much more difficult for them to all of a sudden become unselfish. Even though they're more mature, but they really are not so mature. They should be. So what are we going to do? We're going to hopefully tell a young couple who's about to get married that if they want to succeed, this is the time to get the proper guidance. Don't wait for later in life. Don't wait for the mistakes to happen. Learn from other people's mistakes. Something which is really missing in the area of marriage, whether Jews or non-Jews, is guidance, hadracha. Young couples are not getting enough guidance as to what to do. A man has to learn the language of a woman. And that's not an easy language to learn. I'm still not fluent after many, many years of marriage. And a woman needs to learn the language of a man. They speak different languages. It doesn't mean they can't get along, but they need to understand each other, because hopefully they will be communicating with each other. And if you communicate, you don't want to have misunderstandings. So you need guidance. You know what's funny? It reminds me, I'm sure this is true about English too, but this is especially true about other languages like Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian. I'm sure many languages that are spoken, even in Arabic actually, that are spoken in different countries. There you have the formal language, and then you have the colloquial language that's spoken in the various countries. For example, Spanish. There are some words that are used in Mexico that if you say them in Argentina, it's insulting. And unless you had exposure, you would not know. You're thinking to yourself, okay, let's wash the dishes. And the word for dishes in Mexico is not such a nice word in Argentina. And the same thing with some words of Portuguese between Portugal and Brazil. Depending on how it's used, it could be misconstrued. Yeah. So you have to be careful. If you're starting off, you're just getting married, learn the language. Receive the proper guidance from one who's experienced, of course. And this will help a lot. It will help a lot to save people misunderstandings. Obviously, in order to succeed in any enterprise, one has to assume responsibility. You have to be responsible. You're driving, you have to be a responsible driver. Just that in driving, you have to also be careful. They tell you about defensive driving. You may be doing everything right, but what if the other one is not doing something right? Well, this idea can be applied to marriage too. What if you are doing everything right, but the other one is not? Well, there's something called defensive driving. How do you deal with something like that? It doesn't say you just give up. Okay, since there's a lot of drunks out there, and since there's a lot of people who don't know how to drive, I'm not going to drive. I'm going to get a divorce from my car. No, you want to continue to drive. So you have to learn defensive driving. How do you deal with tough people? There's a whole course about that. Isn't it worth to take this course if it's about marriage? Especially if the issues repeat themselves? If one assumes, if one takes responsibility, then that's what he will need to do. I very much believe that one of the first rules that one needs to adapt, one needs to follow in order to grow and to mature is to be modeh al ha'emet, to admit one's faults and to always say, I was wrong, I made a mistake, sorry. This modeh al ha'emet is so overlooked, very much overlooked by people. And in Judaism, it is so emphasized every day, almost every day, in our prayers. Right after we finish the most important part of the prayer, the Amidah, the Shemona Esrei, we say something called Tahanun. Tahanun is a very powerful prayer of confession, and it's very specific. And you bang your chest when you say Ashamnu Bagadnu, right? And the rest, the whole list of areas in one's life where you may have committed a wrong. Ashamnu means I'm guilty. Bagadnu, I've betrayed someone, betrayed God, betrayed others, stolen something. How many people just rush through, they don't even know what they're saying. What a shame. Powerful prayer to confess, to admit, So that is really number one. The number one advice that I would suggest for one who really wants to grow, mature, and become stronger is to admit one's faults, one's mistakes, to always speak the truth, to realize that we're not perfect, and to say so to the other individual, not just for us, not just to ourselves, but to actually say it, to verbalize it. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Number two, to be very careful not to denigrate, not to be disrespectful of any human being, even those that we don't agree with, even those we don't really like so much, even those that are not from our faith. Now, obviously, people who are dangerous, people who are dishonest, you can stay away from them, but don't make fun of anyone. If anything, feel bad for them. Look to what level they have stooped, that they did or that they committed this crime. Feel bad for them. But don't in any way be disrespectful of any human being. Every human being was created in the image of God, and we need to be respectful. People who believe differently than you may disagree with them, you may think that they're completely wrong. Okay, that's fine. You're entitled to that opinion, but don't make fun of them. Don't look down at them. What if somebody is really doing the wrong thing then? Well, if you can't rebuke him and if you can't change him, then pray for him. We started off, remember, with V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, to love another Jew, another human being as yourself. It takes a lot. If you can't help them, at the very least, if you care about them, pray for them. May God enlighten them. May they one day awaken to see that they were wrong. May they one day change their demeanor. At least pray. What does it take to pray? It's so cheap. Just words of prayer, obviously sincere words of prayer, that they should get the right help that they need. If you can't help them, at least pray for them. There's a story in the Gemara of a rabbi who was very much annoyed by his neighbors. He had neighbors who were criminals, and they committed a lot of, wrongs. And the rabbi was very, very upset. And he was going to pray for their death. May they disappear. And Beruria, his wife, very smart woman, told him, "You're making a mistake. The verse, the pasuk says, Yitamu chataim min haaretz, u'rsha'im onenam." It says in the verse, may all sins disappear. It doesn't say sinners. Pray for them. Don't pray for their death. Pray that they should repent. Pray that they should become better people. Itamu chataim, the verse says. We pray that sin should disappear, not sinners. He did so. And they did teshuvah. Another important area that can help a couple or any individual is to continuously work on refining his character. We all have faults and weaknesses, but not everybody makes it a habit of working on himself. There are people who are stingy by nature. They don't try hard enough to become more benevolent, more charitable. It takes getting used to it. A lot of work is required. And what I suggest, if somebody wants to hear lectures about this, there's a whole series of lectures that we did many years ago about the midot, about character refinement. That is one place to start. Or learn Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, Mishlei, Proverbs from Solomon, Kohelet, Ecclesiastes. Beautiful books that can apply to any human being regardless of his background or religion. Good advice about life. So that's somewhere to start. It's not easy, but at least you got to start somewhere. You know, it's strange. It's really strange. A lot of people put in a lot of work, a lot of effort into their own materialistic interest, whether it's planning a vacation, buying a new car, remodeling their home. They put so much effort into that why not put that same effort or more into your marriage, into your relationship, that is much more valuable. You got to get the best deal, the most beautiful tile, right? What kind of hardwood is it going to be? What kind of windows are we going to use, right? Or vacation. They want to maximize their vacation. What sights are they going to see? So much goes into all of these materialistic pursuits, and very, very little is left, little time and effort left for what's really important in life. Another idea that is very, very known to many of you is perspective. One's perspective is not always right. People complain how miserable they are. But sir, why don't you look at how the cup is half full instead of half empty? Or as we say, in other words, count your blessings. You have beautiful children. You have healthy children. Some people have, perhaps a good career, right? They don't have the best of children, right? Some people have good children, but they're lacking in some other area. Some people have good children, have a good career, but are not healthy physically. Some people have no money, no children, but they have a very devoted wife, an angel. Not everybody has everything. Count your blessings. Look at all the good you have. And you would be happier. Perspective. So if people would have the right perspective, they would complain less about what they don't have. Instead, they would focus on what they do have. Another idea is what the rabbis tells me, Kol melamedai hiskalti. I have learned something from many people, even from those who are younger than me, from little children. What it takes for one to agree to learn from someone who's less knowledgeable than himself or younger is anava, is humbleness. She's not going to tell me what to do. I'm older than her, I'm smarter than her. Where's your humbleness? You can learn something from every human being. Even from children, sometimes they're so creative. They come up with some beautiful ideas. You can learn something from them too. Be humble. You don't know everything. You can learn something from every human being. And then we have another idea that I've already talked about in the past, called Aseh Lecharav, that the rabbis tell us in Pirkei Avot. Make for yourself a rabbi, a teacher. Get someone that can guide you, that can help you, that can answer your questions. Don't think that you can answer all the questions by yourself. Don't think that you can fix all the problems by yourself. Give you an example of myself. There are certain repairs that I used to do on my own at home. Whether it was plumbing, electrical, carpentry, whatever, small repairs. Why not do it yourself? You can save money, especially if you like repairing it. I don't do so anymore, not as much, a little bit. Because time is money, first of all. And as we get older, we realize that even though this is going to cost me $65 to call the plumber, or whatever they charge, first of all, he will do a better job. He has all the tools, even though I have tools too. He knows what he's doing. He's more experienced. He will do it in less time. Money comes and goes. We can't think about money because time is money. Our time is precious. I can do something else with that half an hour. And not only that, in case something goes wrong, it ends up not being a half an hour, but 2 hours. What a waste. So it's not only time. It's also that he is a professional. There are professionals in their various fields. Why try to figure out everything on your own? Why try to fix everything on your own? Consult with the professionals. Go to those who specialize in that area. Don't assume that you can fix all your problems by yourself. A husband and wife are having problems. They may not be able to resolve their issues, their differences. It's okay. Who's to say that you can't do it? You're both biased. You both maybe are not knowledgeable enough. You don't have the right ideas. Consult with a professional, one who does have experience, one who does know, hopefully, the solution to your particular problem. The rabbis, of course, saw this, how important this is. We can't live without someone guiding us sometimes. We just need to ask others for their advice. So if people would apply this in their life, that whenever there's a big issue or some major differences, let's not try to argue about it, let's not try to fight about it, let's just go and find what a third opinion says and hopefully follow that. And since Shavuot is approaching, I thought that perhaps this would be a good time to explain something that you may never have thought about. What do we read on Shavuot? Megillat Ruth. That whole episode of Ruth is read on this holiday. After all, she converted, she was a Moabite woman. It is from her that the seed of Mashiach comes. If you recall the story, Ruth and Orpah married the sons of Elimelech and Naomi. They passed away in Moab. So the women, the two women, actually the three, but we're talking right now about Orpah and Naomi and Ruth, they were widows. And what does Naomi tell them? Their mother-in-law tells them, listen, I'm too old to bear any more children, so don't wait for me so that you can have another of my sons that you can marry. Just go back to your land. Go back to your faith. Go back to your customs and traditions, to your way of life. No reason for you to stay around here in Israel. You know what happens at the end of the story? Orpah goes back to Moab, and Ruth insists on embracing Judaism all the way. And she eventually becomes the great-grandmother of David HaMelech. Right? She bore a son to Boaz by the name of Oved, who had Yishai, who had David, who later had Shlomo. My question was, I was thinking about this today, wait a minute. The two went through a similar experience. They married Jewish gentlemen. They were perhaps semi-converted then. Orpah decided to just drop everything and go back after her husband passed away. And Ruth says, no way. I'm going at this full force. Don't stop me, she tells her mother-in-law. Wherever you go, I will go with you. Only death will part us. She was very adamant about embracing Judaism all the way. Why? Why did one of them decide to go one way and the other one decide to go the other way? Good question, no? Two women of the same geographical location, Moab. Similar experience, but one decided to go back to Moab, the other one said, I'm sticking it out with you, with the Jewish people. I don't think there is a clear answer. I don't think you will find an explanation that tells you what was going on in Ruth's mind, in her head, or what was going on in Orpah's mind. There's no way we can ask them. But it is possible to see behavior. It is possible to see character. And if you look at the Ruth and you analyze all the Pesukim, all the verses that describe how she went about doing what she did after she came back to Israel, her tzniut, her modesty, her generosity, her sensitivity, you see what a beautiful person she was. It is character that will influence our decisions. If a person is a beautiful person inside, they will make beautiful decisions. Decisions that will be reflected. Decisions that their character will be reflected in. Orpah apparently did not have those kind of qualities. How do we know? Who am I to say that? How do you know what Orpah was like? Well, who came out of Orpah? Goliath. Goliath. And I don't think he was a very kind person. He was cruel. He was arrogant. And he did not believe in God. Very, very different. My father was telling me that look at the name Orpah. He says you can also see from the name. Orpah means orif, to turn your back. Stubborn. Like Paro, same letters, orif. Perhaps the name has a lot to do with the person too, with who he is. What we see from these two individuals is it was the character that made their decision. Just like to finish with society. Society as a whole today has become very selfish. And it makes it more difficult for anyone living during these days, this generation, to act appropriately. You know, it is more difficult and more challenging. to be a selfless person. I remember the times they would call me up on the phone. Sir, you owe yourself a vacation. We're going to give you a free coupon and 50% off discount in the hotels. I said, wait a minute, who told you I owe myself a vacation? I already had one. No, you owe yourself another vacation. You know, obviously they want to sell. I owe myself a vacation. Yeah, it's all about pleasure. It's all about going on trips. It's all about enjoying life. If that's what they are going to teach, if that is what they're going to emphasize in the media, if that is what they value, and that is what people want and strive and spend tons of money in, obviously the society is going to become more and more materialistic. And when you have a very materialistic society, spirituality has a very difficult time competing. To be spiritual, to be fine, to be selfless, honest, dedicated, that's too hard, especially in a materialistic society. This is where Judaism comes in. This is where the Torah comes in. The Torah is a map. The Torah is a guide. The Torah tells us life is not only about receiving, it's about giving. It's about being selfless. This is what is the most important thing in life, the Torah teaches. Don't just expect to receive and receive and receive. It's okay that you receive, but you also have to be a giver. There's a beautiful story of a Jewish advisor to a king. And advisors usually held very prominent positions, and others were envious. So some of his enemies tried to get him into trouble and tried to tell the king, listen, this advisor of yours stole a lot of money from you. Just try to audit what he has and you will see for yourself how much he took from you. So the king eventually was convinced, even though he didn't want on his own to investigate, but because he was a good advisor, but he figured maybe they're right. I give you 3 days, he tells his advisor, I want you to give me a report of everything that you own. The advisor thought it was a strange request, but he went and took his time to figure out what he has. He comes back with a small piece of paper. This advisor was quite wealthy. And on the small piece of paper, it just had a couple of numbers. And the king was very upset. The king says, how dare you tell me a lie? I know myself that you have a lot more than this. What are you making up a story that that's all you have? He says, Your Honor, I'm sorry that you misunderstood here. What you think I have, or what you claim I have, all the real estate, you can take that away from me tomorrow. It's not necessarily mine. Something can happen. A big hurricane can blow it down. What I really have and what I wrote down on this paper, what is really mine, is all the charity that I've done, all the kind deeds. That is upstairs in a safe deposit box that no one can touch and no one can take away from me. Those are my true accomplishments. Those are my real assets. What I have down here, I have today, tomorrow I don't have it. Anybody remember what he ate yesterday? That's gone too. And whatever is not gone, what do you think is going to happen to it? The worms will eat it in the grave. What we ate, what we accumulated, all the wealth does not stay with us forever. We don't take it along with us. What we take along, what is really ours, our true accomplishments, is the charity, the good deeds, all the selfless acts that we've done for others. That is why the Pasuk says, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, B'Shem Reshaim Yirkav. Who do we remember as a blessing? Whose memory is a blessing? The memory of a righteous individual who may have passed away, but his memory is still there because we remember what he did. We want to emulate his deeds. We realize that what he has done to society, to humanity, is such a tremendous contribution that people want to learn from. He's therefore remembered as a blessing. On the other hand, who remembers what Hitler did? People remember the brutality, but that's all they remember. How wicked he was, all the destruction that he brought to this world. That name is to be erased, not to be remembered. What do people really look up to in the end? To those who were righteous, to those who were selfless. not to those who were thinking of taking everything for themselves or destroying others. Right? These people are to be forgotten. The true accomplishments and those who deserve the greatest credit are those who were selfless, who gave to others. I think, therefore, that is the punchline of the lecture. If we rise above our base emotions, then that new acquired strength, B'ezrat Hashem, will bring out the best of us. Because marriage does have the ability to bring out the best and the worst in every human being. It really does. Marriage can be very challenging, but so is life. But if we rise above our base emotions, then B'ezrat Hashem, we will acquire that strength that will only, B'ezrat Hashem, bring out the best in us. Amen.